listening to MuniCast, the podcast that discusses municipal leadership. Season 6 of MuniCast is brought to you by SaskTel's Innovation and Collaboration team. SaskTel can help you sort through the noise to create solutions that add value quickly, whether it's reducing your environmental footprint, driving investment, community development, or just saving money. Contact your SaskTel account manager to find out more. MuniCast is brought to you by SUMA, the voice of Saskatchewan's hometowns. Each season discusses unique perspectives on local governance that includes conversations with both individuals and organizations. Past episodes have explored the core principles and challenges that municipal leaders faced and delved into valuable lessons from seasoned officials, examining the approaches of municipal governments and what they can consider when addressing issues that involve all levels of government, such as mental health and addictions and truth and reconciliation. In Season 6, we are exploring the heart of SUMA. Join us as we roll up our sleeves and chat with our amazing team members about what they do every day and how it plays a vital role in helping Saskatchewan's hometowns thrive. Today, we are talking to members of SUMA's advocacy team, Augustina, Cheyenne, Kerri Martin, Mason Stott, and Sean McKenzie. You can learn more about SUMA's staff on the SUMA website under About Us, Our Team. Conducting today's interview, joining us again, is Jean-Marc Nadeau, CEO of SUMA.
Well, thank you very much, Steph. And welcome, Sean, Augustina, Mason, Cheyenne, and Kerri. And thank you for joining me today. On this season of MuniCast, we are very excited to introduce listeners to SUMA and to discuss our advocacy work. I'd like to start our conversation today with SUMA's Director of Advocacy, Sean McKenzie. Sean, how about you start us off by giving us a bit of an overview of SUMA's advocacy work and how that connects back to our members, the municipalities in Saskatchewan?
Well, certainly, I'd love to. Advocacy is one of the primary functions for SUMA, of course. It's the reason the organization was created back in 1905. And it's really because of the challenge that comes with uniting voices from 440 different members from cities, towns, villages, resort villages, and northern municipalities into something that's actually actionable for either the federal or provincial government, whoever we're advocating. I look at our advocacy as a two-way highway. In true Saskatchewan fashion, we double the lane when we can, but we don't always have the resources available for that. One side brings in information from our grassroots membership, and that can come through our board of directors that represents our members in a fairly direct way. Our convention, of course, sector meetings, regional meetings, summer school, city mayor's caucus, and then, of course, phone and email. And any one of our team are more than happy to answer a member's phone call or email if they have questions or concerns. The other side of the highway pushes information out, and that might be going out to our membership, that might be going to government, to our partners, or to the public. And both sides of this highway are very important for what we do. For the incoming issues, we often have subject matter expertise, we have knowledge of legislation, and we have research on our side here within SUMA. What we lack is the on-the-ground knowledge of what's happening in our members' communities. And on the member side, it's often difficult for them to see where their issues fit within a larger advocacy context, or to have enough background to really understand the full picture of where their problem fits in. So we bring that information in from our members. Often we can act on it in some way immediately, even if that just means adding it as context into issues we're already working on. And when an issue is big enough, we might take that out to a committee for discussion. SUMA has 4 advocacy committees: the Public Safety and Health Committee, Community and Economic Development, Intergovernmental Affairs, and Environment. And these committees are made up of board members that will discuss and make suggestions for what direction they think we should go with specific advocacy issues. We'll take that back, we'll work it into our strategies, and that'll lead to the other side of the highway, the information out. So we create a lot of briefing packages, which are then used by our executive committee when they meet with members of the federal or provincial government. We create discussion papers, often with outside help for research. We create advocacy statements, we put out social media posts, and then we feed a lot of information back to our members for discussion and reporting, accountability, really, for our actions. We also make a lot of partnerships to help advance our interests. So, of course, our sister association in the province is SARM, but we also work with a lot of other municipal organizations. The Alberta Municipalities Association, the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, of course, is a big part of our federal advocacy. And then we have local partnerships as well, our Chambers of Commerce, Saskatchewan Economic Development Agency, and the Sask Seniors Mechanism as examples. Sometimes when an issue warrants it, we'll take it out into the public sphere, and we usually do that through a mixture of traditional and social media. We're often loudest around elections, such as the one coming up later this year. And I think it's important to emphasize that we take a very nonpartisan approach in these. We don't argue politics, we argue policy. And it's policy that directly affects municipalities. So in the last few years, we've brought quite a number of key issues forward. The most pressing one, of course, has been mental health and addictions, which we found concerning enough that we made it a cornerstone issue for the organization. And what that really means is that it's an issue so important that no matter what elected official we're meeting with, regardless of their portfolio, we will bring up that issue. And we made that decision because of the severity of that issue, both in terms of human suffering and financial impact to the province, as well as the direct effect that mental health and addictions issues have on our Saskatchewan municipalities in terms of homelessness, the need for shelters, enforcement, fire safety, and of course, the general well-being of residents. Outside of our harder advocacy issues, last piece I want to touch on is just brand building that we take out into the public sphere. And we currently have a We Are Urban campaign that we're running, which focuses on educating the public about what urban really means in Saskatchewan, which is pretty much everything except for numbered RMs. So those cities, towns, villages, resort villages, and northern municipalities that I mentioned earlier all fall under the urban umbrella. And it's very important for the advocacy work that we do that that definition is recognized and understood. And it is quite common for it to be misused in our province. So we're very excited about the We Are Urban campaign.
That's an awful lot of information, Sean. Thank you very much for that. I really like the analogy of highways, how we receive the information, how we share that information. You mentioned that the association was created in 1905. Back then, there wasn't too many highways. And today there are lots of highways. The point I'm trying to make here is how important it is to not wait for our annual convention to share with us challenges that municipalities members are experiencing on the ground. I think you would agree with me that the sooner we can get on top of an issue, the easier it is to deal with that issue. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Both in terms of how quickly an issue can be expressed by a municipality, because they're getting out of whatever problem that they're in, hopefully sooner. But also in terms of changes that we need to take forward to other levels of government, it's really hard for another level of government to backtrack once they've made firm decisions on particular pieces of legislation or whatever they're bringing forward. Whereas if we're brought in nice and early on in that conversation, we can really kind of adjust the direction that things are heading. And we can make better decisions in the long run. We can affect more change the sooner we can have things brought forward. So absolutely, we encourage our members to contact us anytime they do have an issue arise that they think we might be able to help with. And we're always more than happy to take that call.
No, I totally agree. Thanks for following up on that. Let me start the next section of our conversation here with our community and economic development, or as we commonly call it, CED. This file is held by our advocacy advisor, Augustina. So, Tina, can you tell us more about the work with the community and economic development strategy?
So thank you so much, JM. Yes, just like Sean alluded initially, part of the work that we do at the advocacy level is research. You know, we want to be able to know the needs of our members and bring it back either to our committee or to the internal staff and dissect how to move forward with that. And so that is where the economic and development strategy comes in. An approval was given that we move forward to see how we can create or improve the intermunicipal cooperation or collaboration among our membership. And that includes urban and rural municipalities. Why was this necessary? This was necessary because we noticed that in some communities, you have municipalities that bear the financial burdens of providing different services to their residents. And you also have other residents coming from the neighboring communities enjoy those services, but their municipal leaders do not have any financial contributions to how these things are set up or put together. And so just to make sure that there is that continuous collaboration within the neighboring communities, SUMA decided to clarify this whole thing, or to make sure that there is that continuous relationship of trust. Neighbors are living together as one. It's good to have the government establish what we call the legislation around service delivery agreements. The journey that began in 2021, SUMA hired a consultant to look into the intermunicipal cooperation regarding the service delivery agreement in Saskatchewan. We're looking to see, okay, so what's the status quo? What is the best practice outside of Saskatchewan? So when I say best practices, basically we're looking at the prairie provinces, so Manitoba, Alberta. The research also took into consideration other provinces as well. There is what we call the Planning and Development Act of 2007 in Saskatchewan. That actually allows the establishment of planning districts and regional planning authorities. So what this does is that it outlines the establishment of official community plans, which we call the OCP, that gives permits to intermunicipal development agreements. But let me shock you. So the act doesn't tell you, oh, you must do this. It is voluntary. You can enter into that agreement with your neighbor and decide to pull out the next day if you enter today, right? And that is where the problem is. So we are looking as an organization to advocate the provincial government to say, we want a standard, a consistent act or legislation that will spell out how this agreement, service delivery agreement between neighboring communities should go. Part of the outcome that we have seen in our recent convention, we had the consultants come around to present the report. And I was fortunate to be in that session. I can tell you that through the conversations, through the engagements, there is a need. Our members are actually interested to see that happen. And the other thing also is SUMA is trying to put together, we're working on what we call the policy statement for intermunicipal collaboration. That will also help us to move this forward and clarify where SUMA stands on intermunicipal cooperation. And we have part of the report is a service delivery agreement template, which the consultants put together for our members. The report, the templates, and other resources that come with the package are all uploaded already on our member portal. So if any of our members want to see more or learn more about what is in this report and how the information in the report can help them, they can easily log into member portal. We are doing our best to ensure that our members really have a one-stop shop document that will give them an idea of, okay, instead of me going to read these 55 pages, I just need about 1 or 2 pages. Tell me what it's all about. So we're also putting together an executive summary of what this means, what the whole report is all about. And finally, we are working on advocating the province. One of the things we want to do, which we are good at SUMA, is that we're going to collaborate with other stakeholders. So those are parts of the things we are working on in terms of the economic development strategy.
Thank you. That was a lot of information.
I gave you more than you wanted. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. So we'll chat with Augustina again shortly, but for now, I would like to move to Mason Stott, our Advocacy and Legal Services Advisor, to tell us about the intergovernmental affairs or IGA. As I'm sure many of our listeners know, there has been advocacy work done on assessment reform in the province. Mason, what are some of the key points for municipalities to be aware of for these new advocacy initiatives?
Thanks, Jean-Marc. So SUMA's City Mayor's Caucus established the Assessment, Legislation, and Policy Working Group in early 2023, and the group met 10 times throughout 2023. The membership of the group consisted of city managers and city assessors, as well as a representative from the Urban Municipal Administrators Association of Saskatchewan, or UMass, and SARM. The group was created to discuss various options for change listed in a report created by the International Property Tax Institute, or IPTI. The different options for change included removal of percentages of value, shortening the revaluation cycle from 4 years to 2 years, reducing the base date lag from 24 months to either 18 or 12 months, and moving to a true market value system wherein regulated properties would be subject to the same assessment procedures as non-regulated. And in the end, the group decided to advocate to the province for removal of percentages of value, shortening the revaluation cycle, and shortening the base date lag. These proposed changes have been communicated to the Ministry of Government Relations. Making these changes would improve the understandability and accessibility of property assessment for property owners in Saskatchewan, would improve the timeliness of assessments and therefore their accuracy, and would bring Saskatchewan in line with the assessment practices of other assessment jurisdictions. And interestingly, there are also some other findings which arose from the discussions of the group. And these include allowing only one appeal per revaluation cycle, allowing for use of time-adjusted sales to enable trending, allowing for the ability for high-value and specialized appeals to bypass boards of revision, a review of timeliness and impact of appeal decisions, and instituting mandatory, meaningful outreach between parties. Some of these recommendations were also unanimously supported by the members of the group. SUMA expects to engage in member consultations on these additional findings of the group during the summer of 2024.
Yeah, property assessment is, in essence, it's how our municipalities are funded. So it's very, very important work. And so thank you, Mason, for leading that on behalf of the membership. Another piece to funding and work that we do in the municipal sector is infrastructure. So it's an important piece of the IGA file, and there has been conversations around the future of the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, or commonly known as ICIP, and the Canada Community Building Fund Program, also commonly known as CCBF. What have your conversations around these topics looked like? And do you think there are important items for municipalities to be paying attention to?
So the ICIP program is the product of a bilateral agreement signed in 2018 between the federal government and the province of Saskatchewan. The program will provide about $900 million in federal funding for Saskatchewan infrastructure projects, and ICIP will run for 10 years until 2028. The other program, the CCBF, formerly known as the Gas Tax Fund, is a federal source of funding provided to provinces and territories, which in turn flows this funding to their municipalities to support local infrastructure projects. Municipalities can pool, bank, and borrow against this funding. The CCBF delivers around $2 billion annually to thousands of communities across Canada. In Saskatchewan, the CCBF will provide about $600 million over 10 years to support municipalities, and the CCBF will actually end this year in 2024. So as SUMA looks towards the end of both of these types of infrastructure funding programs, our conversations to both the provincial government and the federal government have continued to be about a variety of points. First, it's important for the next iterations of these projects to provide significant dollars for municipal infrastructure programs, as populations in Canada are growing at a fast rate. The money should provide predictable, flexible, and long-term opportunities for investment. Furthermore, the application processes to access this funding should be straightforward and not burdened by red tape. Next, the types of projects that the money can be spent on should not be unnecessarily restricted to prescribed categories. Rather, municipalities should be able to spend and allocate the money as they see fit. Local governments are the most closely connected governments to the local population and are in the best position to allocate this money. And A one-size-fits-all approach will not work for this type of funding. Finally, any required reporting requirements should not be onerous and should be simple and quick to complete. Many municipalities, particularly those that are smaller in size, will find it difficult to comply with onerous and excessive reporting requirements. Essentially, SUMA wants the next iterations of these projects to offer long-term, predictable, meaningful, and accessible funding for infrastructure projects that is provided without conditions so that municipal governments can decide how best to spend the money, and then in a way that doesn't involve lengthy reporting duties for these municipalities.
Totally agree with you. In fact, as government of proximity, the closest to the population, local leaders should be given the ability to make decisions based on local priorities, and to think that someone in Ottawa, or for that matter in Regina, knows best what needs to happen at the local level, I think is a concept of the past, and we need to really think about municipal government as local leaders and able to establish their priorities at the local level. So the next file we're going to discuss is public safety and health. I'm going to begin the health side of the conversation with our advocacy advisor, Kerri Martin. So Kerri, municipalities of all sizes throughout Saskatchewan are struggling with healthcare staffing gaps, long ambulance wait times. What are your discussions around this look like? And are there currently any options for municipalities to address?
Thank you, Jan. Yes, this is a very complex issue around staffing for healthcare. I've had the opportunity to join many important conversations, one of which was the EMS staffing planning strategy. So SUMA and myself, we've developed relationships with SHA as well as the Saskatchewan Recruitment Agency. So looking at sort of the two-pronged approach, I guess, that the provincial government's looking at in terms of recruitment and retention. One of the pieces that has certainly come up in many conversations is recruitment of healthcare professionals from outside of Canada and the challenges there. So we've had many discussions around how municipalities can support those professionals when they come to their communities. At convention, I heard a lot of good things happening in municipalities to sort of wrap a community around people, supporting health professionals with children, how they can access, cultural support, all of those pieces to ensure that when folks come, that they feel comfortable in staying in those communities. Primarily the smaller communities, I think, have the more significant challenges. I had mentioned the EMS planning strategy. That was a incredibly informative discussion. SHA is doing a lot of good work in trying to solve some of these human resource issues. I think the challenges that the EMS folks face, looking at how you balance such a demanding job that includes shift work away from your own family, often having to go to communities or municipalities that you don't live in, looking at whether there's places for staff to stay when they are on shift. So again, that's a role municipalities can have in supporting people in accessing housing if there's housing available in those communities. Some of the other conversations in terms of what is causing some of these ambulance delays when people don't have a bed to go to, when they're in hospital, looking at long-term care or other needs. Of course, that clogs up our ER systems and has EMS folks sitting and waiting with patients for incredibly long periods of time, then making them unavailable for other calls. So, not unlike anything else, these complex issues, it's all connected. Certainly, and I know we'll get into this, but the mental health and addictions crisis is also having a significant impact on healthcare and burnout of staff. So you have healthcare professionals dealing with mental health and addictions daily and, causing that burnout, which is, of course, then further impacting healthcare human resources. So as I mentioned, the advocacy team, we've connected with the agencies that are working on these issues and established relationships. And we continue to advocate for changes to be made to address these gaps and ensure that the staffing requirements are met and that staff doing the work are supported to do that work so that they are staying in those positions.
So thank you, Kerri. Yeah, there's been a lot of conversations around ambulance wait times in Redverse, for example. I've spoken with the mayor several times about that and the regional director, Pat Jackson. So just moving on, maybe how do we address, there's been a lot of conversations around how to address substance abuse. And if you have been looking at evidence-based proactive policies to effectively advocate on a multi-pronged approach to addressing substance abuse, what has your research shown you about ways that municipalities can be part of the approach and why it's important that they are part of the conversation? Because we hear a lot from, Saskatoon, Regina, and maybe some of the larger urbans in this province, but we know that there is issues in other municipalities, urban municipalities, or smaller villages and smaller towns also have issues along those lines. And so, what's your research telling you at this point?
Well, in terms of why municipalities need to be part of the conversation, as you mentioned, the unique challenges when you're looking at a smaller community versus a Saskatoon or Regina. If we're looking at, say, accessing mental health services, one of the things from talking to folks in our smaller centers, smaller municipalities, it's incredibly challenging to have that mental health provider, potentially if they have one in their community, be somebody that they know, the family knows. There's not sort of that anonymity. People are not wanting to come forward, talk about these issues with somebody in the community that they know. So looking at how do we address that? Are there online options? Is there the ability to travel to the larger centers? So talk about that in terms of mental health. The substance misuse and mental health and looking at the evidence-based proactive approach. One of the things that we have sort of reignited is an advisory group around mental health and addictions. And with that group is bringing together experts, community leaders, CBO frontline staff, and folks with lived experience, as well as municipal leaders. Decisions or public policy decisions made at provincial level, in particular, of course, impact municipalities significantly. And sometimes those decisions don't appear to be as informed by the folks that have the frontline knowledge or have the most impact. So the group that we have put together is looking at ensuring that our advocacy and the calls to the provincial government are as informed and based on evidence as they can be. Looking at, with substance misuse, to look at, say, the approach that the provincial government is taking right now, the recovery-oriented model, which of course is in, focus on treatment beds, which we have called for, and it is something very much needed. However, there has to be recognition that harm reduction measures are also needed as part of that plan and the economic impact of not having those measures available. Looking at just, say, the economic impact on municipalities of overdose and what properly or fully funded CBOs can do to divert a lot of those costs. So helping folks that are experiencing substance misuse with complex needs in addition to that substance misuse, that those CBOs can prevent how many 911 calls, EMS, police having to attend, and what the cost looks like. So that's something that we certainly can't ignore when we're talking about this complex issue. Treatment is great, needed. Not everybody is exactly in a position to attend treatment. In addition to that, there has to be a really comprehensive plan for folks, if they are to attend treatment, that they have stable housing, support, wraparound services before, during, and after for the individual and their entire family.
Across the province, SaskTel is engaged with many different municipal organizations who seek to innovate. Contact your SaskTel account manager to learn more about some of these initiatives and how they can help your municipality today.
So thank you, Kerri. As our listeners can have, I'm sure, realized by now, there's an awful lot of work that is happening here at SUMA, and the amount of research and the amount of information that we need to conceptualize to prepare our advocacy is just incredible. Let me go on to the next component of that file, public safety and health, which is specifically around public safety. And the advocacy and communication advisor, Cheyenne, has taken the lead on this side of the advocacy file. So SUMA has been putting significant effort and focus around advocating for RCMP recruitment and retention. So Cheyenne, if I could turn the floor over to you and tell us about the conversations you've been having and the success you've been having on these files.
Sure, thanks, JM. First, this is a unique issue in that it extends into both the federal and provincial spheres. A shortage of RCMP officers isn't a uniquely Saskatchewan problem. Every province and territory in Canada is dealing with a similar issue. SUMA sits on the RCMP Contract Management Committee, and so we do receive updates on the efforts that the organization of the RCMP are putting in to try and solve this issue. So I can confirm that work is being done, but unfortunately, it's largely out of our hands. However, we have done significant advocating on the provincial side to help Saskatchewan get a bit of a heads up, so to speak. Although the RCMP does fall under the federal purview, every province or territory has to provide funding to be allotted officers. Recently, our provincial government committed to funding for the full complement of officers. So basically what that means is that if Ottawa sends them, they will be paid for. Previously, the provincial government would only commit to paying for officers that were already here. While this change doesn't solve the recruitment and retention crisis entirely, it does remove an important barrier, and hopefully it will bring Saskatchewan up on the list of places that officers will be sent.
Yeah, absolutely. As a former RCMP member, recruiting is such an important component to ensuring that our municipalities are receive the proper service. These challenges are not RCMP centric. I think people will recognize that every municipal police service in this country is facing similar issues. So, but related to that, Cheyenne, we've been doing quite a bit of work around the Police Act. We know in Saskatchewan, the Police Act was enacted in 1991, believe it or not, some 33 years ago. While it's been open from time to time to amend, to bolt new things on to it, I think the Act itself would arguably be ready for a complete renewal. Can you share what SUMA has been advocating for this on this file, rather, and how it may affect municipalities going forward?
As you mentioned, it was written in 1991. So to put that into perspective, I think I was 2. And it hasn't undergone any significant changes since. And you and I both know that public safety and policing specifically is taking place in a different world now. The public's expectation and general view of public safety has changed. And as a result, there's been a fundamental paradigm shift in how society looks at the function of policing. So SUMA would like to see policing take a more holistic approach. We want to see the incorporation of CBOs and other professionals who may be more suited to handling a specific type of situation. For example, as we mentioned, we know that we're in a mental health and addictions crisis, and many calls received are a direct result of these issues. So it would be greatly beneficial, we think, for all involved if, in addition to having police respond to a call such as this, a trained social worker or other mental health care provider was available to de-escalate the situation. Having this written right into the Act would make it so that it was a common, standardized response, which I think would really change the landscape for everyone, and it would just work a lot better. While we can only speak to the changes that we would like to see made, we are hopeful that having the Act open will allow many stakeholders to have a say in how policing should look in the future. With so many voices needing to be part of the conversation, it can be tough to predict what the full impact will be on municipalities. But what I can say is that, as with everything we do, our hope is that it will make public safety in our communities better.
Yeah, thank you. I want to take this moment to applaud you and the team for the amount of consultation and partnership that we've created as a result of the work around the Police Act. I won't name these groups because by fear of making sure that they're not singled out, but certainly there's been an awful lot of consultation already that we've done, and we're certainly looking forward to the province, taking up this mantle and moving this file forward. As you said, you were 2 and I was 21, so that's a long time ago, and we're looking forward to having the act opened up and renewed. Let me go back to Tina to talk a little bit more about our environmental advocacy. What are some of the most prevalent environmental issues that are currently affecting municipalities?
Some of them are waste management. So when I say waste management, we're looking at recycling, we're looking at landfills, we're looking at impacted sites, composting, or any other issues that are waste management related that our members are facing. We also have another area that are impacting our members environmentally, and that is climate adaptation. That includes climate change, that includes green infrastructure, and if you like, electric vehicle charging stations. We have water-related issues as well. We're looking at wetland conservation. We're looking at water quality management. And we're also looking at preventing the introduction and the spread of aquatic invasive species. One other one that is not so common, but it's impacts our members, is the biological part of the environmental issue. So that is categorizing issues such as rat infestations and invasive species in water and also on land.
The Municipal Climate Change Action Center, or commonly known as MCCAC, is an initiative aimed at providing support to municipalities in their efforts to mitigate or address climate change issues impacting our communities. So SUMA has been very active in this area, and I'd like to invite you to tell me more about and tell our listeners more about this project that you've been leading on behalf of the organization.
For sure, JM. So since 2019, SUMA has actually been advocating for the establishment of a Municipal Climate Change Action Center, which we call MCCAC in Saskatchewan. This will help to enhance municipalities' resilience to climate change. Now, this proposed model is inspired by the MCCAC established in Alberta in 2009, which is being overseen by Alberta municipalities. Now, the model will facilitate municipal collaboration and provides access to funding and resources for renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. I always call this the encouragement of municipalities going green, having all the green infrastructure that will help them be up to date in terms of global requirements. Now, at the 2024 convention, SUMA officially signed a joint agreement with EcoWest Canada. SUMA's advocacy efforts to establish the MCCAC program with provincial government support has been faced with different challenges. And leading to that, the strategic decision to collaborate with EcoWest Canada to secure federal funding became one of the best options for SUMA. Now, partnering with EcoWest Canada offers several advantages, including access to a broader range of funding sources, which will reduce financial risk that is associated with dependence on a single entity. We will continue to be optimistic because in January, SUMA applied for a grant, and we're looking to get that funding with the federal government, which is one of the good things of the EcoWest partnership. We will also continue to advocate the provincial government.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. This partnership with EcoWest, thank you for raising that. I'm very excited about that as an organization. I think every time we can partner with organizations that are experts in a specific field helps us with our advocacy and our research and putting together our arguments with our advocacy. To be fair to our sister organization, Alberta Municipalities, while we've at SUMA have referred the Municipal Climate Change Action Center, MCCAC, as such, we don't want to steal a great name for Alberta municipalities. And for you listeners, just know that MCCAC will be rebranded very shortly, and we're looking forward to having that work being done on your behalf. So that brings us to the end of our discussions on SUMA's main advocacy files. However, as I'm sure you know, the work doesn't stop here. Mason, you have been working on bylaw and workplace policy templates to help support municipalities with changes in legislation. What are some of the templates you have developed thus far, and what were the changes happening that have made these updates necessary?
So this has been some interesting work that I've been able to be a part of, and some of the bylaw templates created so far and that I've been working on the legal and legislative working group with include the e-scooter bylaw template, golf cart on public roads template, public spaces drinking template, and animal control template. These are available on the SUMA wiki. I'm also working on a traffic bylaw template right now and a surveillance or security camera bylaw template, well-being budget, hiring policy template, and progressive discipline and termination policy template. So those last two would be workplace policies. And a violence prevention policy template was also completed and is available for SUMA members. The need for some of these templates have arisen due to changes in legislation. So for example, the requirement that on May 17th, all workplaces need to have violence prevention policies is something that arose from 2023 changes to the Saskatchewan Employment Act. Legislative change also spurred on the creation of the public spaces drinking template, and a 2023 SUMA resolution and changes in best practices by SGI was the reason behind the creation of the golf carts on public roadways template. Other templates have been created due to demand from SUMA's membership. And I'd also like to take this time to say if any municipalities are interested in a bylaw template to be created for a specific topic, please reach out and let us know so we can have a discussion on it. These templates are designed to be customized to each municipality, so they aren't a one-size-fits-all copy and paste template, but the pieces which need to be customized are highlighted in yellow or otherwise made apparent.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, because I know our municipalities can benefit from any help we can provide them. And those templates, while they'll need to be tweaked to meet the local needs, using a formatted template will definitely help our members. So the last question I have for you, Mason, is with respect to what's happening in Alberta. Alberta municipalities and rural municipalities of Alberta have been very vocal against these two new bills from the provincial government in Alberta. And I know you've been keeping an eye on those two bills, because we don't know what will happen here in Saskatchewan and how our government will consider those moving forward after the next election. So how does this help you better support municipalities in Saskatchewan, the fact that you're able to keep track of what's happening across the country?
Yes, exactly. So in Alberta, Bill 18 and Bill 20 have been introduced, and I've been monitoring them to keep updated on what's going on in Alberta, what that provincial government is doing to regulate their municipalities. So this helps SUMA stay ahead of if or when the Saskatchewan government decides to also adopt legislation which is similar. And Alberta's Bill 18, which is the Provincial Priorities Act 2024, would prevent municipalities from being able to enter into agreements with the federal government without provincial approval. And this is problematic because it would hinder municipalities' abilities to accept funding and other supports directly from the federal government. Alberta's Bill 20, which is the Municipal Affairs Statute Amendment Act, would give the Alberta government more power over municipalities, including granting cabinet the power to remove councillors from office if in the public interest to do so, forcing councils to repeal bylaws the province does not agree with, and allowing the creation of municipal political parties as part of a pilot project in Edmonton and Calgary. And these are all issues which would be problematic for municipal governments in Saskatchewan, and something that SUMA is discussing at its Intergovernmental Affairs Committee as well. We're keeping an eye on these and developing proactive responses if needed.
So moving on, SUMA has been working to increase our engagement with Indigenous organizations and individuals. And Kerri, can you tell me a little bit more about these efforts and why it's important for SUMA and its members?
What we've recognized in looking at reconciliation and partnering with Indigenous folks is we need to engage at all levels. So I've reached out or have relationship with the Office of the Treaty Commissioner and formal sort of leadership groups, but also the importance of engaging with Indigenous folks, Indigenous advocates, frontline advocates, and representation from across communities. We have engaged with elected officials at the provincial government level who are representative of Indigenous communities and have plans going forward of expanding on those relationships more provincially. It's certainly important in the work that we are doing when we're looking at reconciliation and working with Indigenous partners. We have to look at the reality of all of the issues that advocacy is dealing with and the overrepresentation of Indigenous folks in the areas of substance misuse, homelessness, and the ongoing impact of colonization, residential schools. We advocate for public policy changes to ensure further marginalization is not occurring. So looking at policies with social services, health, is work that we continue to do. We have been really focused on bringing in Indigenous voices to all of our conversations and recognizing them as experts, just as we would recognize, other experts that, from doctors or researchers, those with lived experience. Indigenous people are experts when we are talking about some of these issues. It's very important that we continue to engage and build these relationships with individuals.
So you recently attended the Housing and Homelessness Conference organized by Métis Nations Saskatchewan. Why was it important for SUMA to be a part of that conversation?
Yes, and this was an excellent opportunity. I learned a lot. I think everybody there from all the different organizations could say the same, that we all learned a lot. I think why it was very important for SUMA to be there. I think there is often a lack of understanding of the role or responsibility of municipalities versus provincial government, who can have an influence on, say, housing or what that looks like and where advocacy efforts need to be targeted. Additionally, how municipalities can work with the provincial government, or how we can work with our Indigenous leaders and Métis Nation, Saskatchewan, to address this really complex issue. There was a lot of incredible takeaways and actionable initiatives that came out of that conference that I think we are really going to see an impact and have already seen an impact in the area of housing and homelessness. And I'm very grateful to Métis Nation for taking sort of the charge in that area, and allowing SUMA to educate all the participants around the role of municipalities and how we can all work together.
So I guess the last question I'd have for you, Kerri, is what are the policies that SUMA is looking at to reduce barriers to having people with lived experience engage with our advocacy work?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we have an advisory group specific to mental health and addictions. I'll use that sort of as an example, and that is how a lot of this work came to fruition. So, everybody's sort of sitting at that table, talking about these complex issues, are typically being financially compensated by their workplaces, whether they're researchers, academics, CBO leaders. But the voice of lived experience folks and Indigenous advocates were not at the table in a formal, intentional way. There's often barriers that folks face in obtaining meaningful employment in these areas due to the issues like that I've shared already. What we've developed is a policy to ensure proper and meaningful compensation for folks to attend those very important discussions. At this time, everything is sort of virtual, so there's no, travel expenses and those sorts of things. But going forward, if those barriers were there and we expanded some of the work we're doing, that's certainly something we would look at. I experienced this at the Métis Nation conference. There was an individual with lived experience in relation to homelessness on the panel with me and other experts and leaders, and his voice and perspective was arguably the most important voice there. And there was provisions put in place to ensure he could be there. He was supported, he was compensated fairly, and that is something that at SUMA we are looking to ensure that we have in policy going forward. And we're talking about reconciliation or engaging with Indigenous individuals and looking for their expertise, who want to ensure that it's not exploitative. So they're giving, their expertise, their knowledge, or often going through their own trauma without fair compensation and support provisions in place. And so there shouldn't be any of these conversations without the voices impacted at the table, because none of us have all of the answers. And we need that diversity. We need to understand what people are experiencing today, right now, in these areas.
Well, thank you very much, Kerri. Such important work, and I really appreciate everything you do with that file. In our journey towards reconciliation as an organization, and to help our municipalities wherever their journey take them. So I want to take this moment to thank Augustina, Mason, Kerri, and Cheyenne for taking the time to take our listeners through an in-depth conversation on SUMA's advocacy. And before I close off, Sean, I want to say how proud and humbled I am about the opportunity to work with this team and the work that you and your teammates do on the advocacy. Yes, it's on behalf of the membership, but the ability that you have and the team has to find those important issues and move the file and the needle forward is very important. So as we close, I wanted to end this conversation today by inviting you to provide any closing thoughts on the wonderful work that you and the team are doing moving forward.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jam. I can't say enough how incredibly proud and fortunate I really am to work with such a strong, coordinated team. I think everybody listening can really have heard the passion and subject matter expertise that they bring to their files, and really how eager we are to see real change occur in our province and to benefit our members and all of the residents in them. We're all very excited to be here. We're intent on our work, and we believe the change can happen. So I guess to close, I would just encourage those listeners, reach out and engage with us, follow us, engage in our campaigns on social media. You're going to see We Are Urban campaign is going live very, very soon. Our provincial election campaign will go live a little bit later this year, of course, depending when the writ drops. Attend our events, come to our webinars, ask questions. And by all means, if you feel like your municipality has an issue, or even if you would just like more information about something, send an email or pick up the phone. We're here to help our members, and we are always happy to take that call. So I encourage connect as much as you can.
This brings us to the end of another episode of MuniCast. Thank you for listening in and exploring with us how SUMA engages with its members throughout the year. I look forward to welcoming Jean-Marc back for the rest of Season 6 to continue interviewing SUMA staff and provide listeners with a behind-the-scenes look into SUMA.